everyone. My name is Beth Grabowski, and I am the Faculty Director for the Northwestern University MSA program. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar and to thank you for spending some time with us today. For those who may not be familiar with our program, Northwestern University offers a Master of Arts in Sports Administration. Our goal with the program is really to help our students stand out in a very crowded sports marketplace by offering classes that will give our students skills to really differentiate themselves, as well as offering networking opportunities, because this industry is quite a bit about who you know and being in the right place at the right time. So amongst our faculty and fellow students, we really provide some robust opportunities on that front as well. I'm really excited about some new electives that we're offering, things like IT and sports and strategic social media, again, that are really going to provide those very specific and special skill sets for our students. In addition to excellent classes and faculty with fantastic sports industry experience, the program really does set itself apart with the Northwestern brand and the fact that Chicago is one of the most sports-saturated cities in the world, which really provides great opportunities for our students in both internship opportunities, volunteering, and again, some more of that networking that I referred to. So we hope you'll look us up online for further information, and we're very pleased to be a part of this webinar series. So on the note of our great faculty, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Dan Magala, one of our esteemed instructors, to introduce today's special guest.
Well, Mary and I were talking maybe in the introduction. She and I, in the opening comments, mentioned that we met actually probably 1999 or so when I was with the Chicago Bears. We certainly learned in the last webinar session about the time with the Chicago Bears that I had, the early days of the web. And we were joking, I think we had some technical difficulties about new media and all of that. So we're certainly no strangers to some of those. You certainly know those lessons, but would love, like, your career. You're with obviously the Buffalo Bills in a very unique role, executive vice president of strategy. Going back to that first role that you had, and you and I were like probably the most junior people, I think, at NFL meetings, and a lot of the students, I think, would love to aspire to even that kind of first job. But walk us through your career path, some of the changes that you saw, and going back to when we were those new media internet types, right?
Yeah, life was a lot of fun back then. It was like the new frontier, and there was a lot of money being thrown at it too. So a little background on me. First of all, hi to everyone. Thanks for being here. I went to the University of Virginia, and my undergraduate degree was in marketing and management from the McIntire School of Business, which is the undergrad school of business there. And I had a unique relationship, so we'll just get this on the table now. Ralph Wilson, he just passed away in March, but the owner of the Buffalo Bills was my uncle. And at a very young age, I was involved with the Bills, just going to games, and I realized that I really, really loved the energy and the people and the passion of sports. And so when I was at the University of Virginia, it was that time when new media was up and rolling, and it was a big venture capital period of time where there was a bunch of money being thrown because they thought that advertising was this holy grail of revenue for the new media and the websites. So I graduated in 2000 and had the incredible opportunity to move to Buffalo, which, shocking, my friends were a little questionable as to why I was moving to Buffalo, but to work for the Bills and be coordinator of new media, where that's when I met Dan, because he was doing the same for the Chicago Bears. So really, it was our first website. So prior to that, it was basically a media guide, but online. So this was the first time where you take every part of the business and you put it onto the internet. And we worked with a web development company actually out of Chicago, who actually paid us 6 figures to develop our website. So for me, that was a lot of fun because I wasn't a cost center. We're getting paid for this. I'm actually generating revenue. And it was this whole new world. And that was the whole world, and I would say that as I've gone through my career, that experience has helped me significantly, because one of the biggest changes that I've seen in sports, particularly the NFL, but all sports, is digital media. You know, it's been a huge growth engine for the NFL and for the Bills, and obviously for all other sports as well. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth, and it allowed me to learn all about the company, because you had to go to every single business unit and learn about what they needed to have as their presence online, whether it's player talent and all the player part of it, or if it's marketing and partnerships and community relations and et cetera, stadium information. It was, it's your business online. So I moved from that into database management. So, and that's another area obviously today that is so important, is knowing your customer and having the continued evolution of technology to know that customer all the time, real time, and it gets a little spooky now. But back in the day, it was CRM, so a contact or customer relationship management database, and we implemented one at the Buffalo Bills because, as some know, we don't sell out our stadium every game, and we're in a small market. So it was kind of an onus on us in order to compete in the NFL from a business standpoint, to understand our customer and be more advanced than maybe the Bears in that regard, because they're sold out, they're in a big market. So we really were kind of first movers in that space, and just developing the systems so that our ticket office knew who their customer was prior to calling. They had a database that would tell them, you all know this, a database that would tell them like what tickets they've bought, what merchandise they've bought, how long have they been a season ticket holder, what's their spouse's name, how many kids do they have, all of that type of information, which really helped us, during that time. Do you want me to go on from there?
Well, let's pause for a second, because maybe we'll split it up into chapters, but I think it's really interesting. Like when I think back of our time, at those NFL internet meetings, and there would be ownership there, this curiosity of like, is there like Google type money, floating around here? What department should you be in? We were kind of these young renegades, I feel like, and I feel like there's an element, especially for the students, that history is repeating itself a little bit. With, if we were new media, they're social media, right? Of like I'm sure you see these new roles popping up even for an organization like the Bills. Looking back on that time, what's your advice for students that get positions like that? Of even you, Sharon, you graduated even beyond that one dimension, right? And you had those other departments, but I feel that in the work we do with teams, that I'm like, the question that team owner is asking me about Twitter and Facebook is identical to what they were asking me 15 years ago about club.com.
Right. Yeah, I would say the social media era, it's just a matter of age. I mean, the young people coming in, and Stan mentioned, we've created our online/digital media/social media/broadcast for digital broadcast staff has grown. I think we have like almost 10 people in that encompasses that department, one dedicated to social media. That would have never happened. And they are so much smarter in that technology than anyone who's older, just because you weren't experiencing it the same way. And I think for that person, for that particular position, I'm thinking of the person who does a great job for us. What she does is she really is proactive. Okay, so she's proactive in her education. She crosses departments. She makes sure she knows everyone. She makes sure that people understand what she's doing. She understands what's going on with the company so that she can see her opportunities to use social media. But she also has the respect. She doesn't cross the line. So there's a balance there. But I think a lot of it has to do with making sure that all the other people in the organization know what she's doing in order for them to know that they can come to her with something. Or like, I was at a Hall of Fame event, and I immediately knew to send her the information to send it out. It's kind of, you have to be top of mind. People have to understand that they don't need to understand everything about Twitter or Facebook. So they need to understand that the Bills are using it in this way, and so just send her the information, and she'll do something strategic with it.
And that's communication. I mean, I think back, and again, the history lesson, I think, for the students or those entering the workforce from our time was, I remember sometimes being in business strategy meetings, and they're like, "You're the .com, tech guy.
You're the smart
Why
guy."
Are you? Yeah. But like understanding, and I remember Ted Phillips, who we heard from last time, him saying, "Dan, read off our internet stats for yesterday." And he broke it down very specifically, and he was a visionary that I think supported it. But he's like, okay, everybody, there were more people that visited the website yesterday than will attend a game all season long. This is our great voice for it, right? But like you have those moments where maybe people that have been there for a while might not get it at the same level, but that's where a young person coming right out of into the workforce, I think, can really make a difference if they're maneuvering everything. Yeah, properly internally.
Maneuvering's a good word because you can. There's also a lot of landmines on the football side. If you say the wrong thing, I mean, there's always, and you're never going to avoid them completely. But as long as you have an open communication with the football side of the staff to make sure that you seek the proper, authorizations to let them, to retweet or whatever it is. But it's a balance. But definitely communication is the key. And the number one thing I would say to a young person coming into an entry-level job at a team, get to know everyone. Be aggressive in terms of getting to know everyone in the organization, because that goes a very long way. Don't just stay within your department. Don't just stay, if you see people in the hallway, you say hi, you introduce yourself. It goes a very long way, because I think overall in sports, if I'm going to say the most important part about growing in sports and how to advance your career, it's relationships. I mean, obviously, start with competency, ability to do the job, but then it's relationships and continuing those relationships.
Well, what are some tips? Obviously, maneuvering and building relationships with other departments. Are there certain instances that you've seen an employee do that very well? And is there something, especially for the people that are working for teams, to help them kind of almost repeat and customize that process for themselves? And also for those that are looking to get in the industry, it is all about relationships, right? Of like, how do they actually, we talk a lot in class even too, the difference between relationship building versus networking or just collecting LinkedIn requests, right?
Well, I think relationship building versus networking, relationship building, you need to provide value, so I think providing value is the key word there, because I can think, I'm not going to name any names, but a couple people who in our organization who, one does in-house, it's like travel journalist, and so you're going to work with her because she's going to interview you for certain pieces. Well, when she first was hired, she made sure that she got to know everyone and walked around and, built that relationship, but at the same time, you were also going to be interviewing with her. So by the time I was interviewing with her, for part of my job is overseeing our community relations and all of our community outreach. So if it has something to do with the Play 60 event or something, I'd be doing an interview with our BuffaloBills.com journalist. I had a relationship with her. So the interview was much more, it was richer. I was much more comfortable with her. I had a comfort level. And she's providing me value because she's making me comfortable. And she knows me and she knows what questions to ask, and she's done her research. So she, a lot of it just has to do with understanding, who you're talking to and how you can help them in their function. So, another example of that is in our sponsorship department. We hired a guy who, just is really, really outgoing, knows everyone in the building, and has made a point to understand what the other departments do, so that then he will communicate what they're doing in sponsorship, and he'll also try to relate that to what they're doing, and really does a nice job of like not living in a silo, I guess.
Yeah, and then they're more open to go to bat for him, right? Because they have that credibility of kind of living beyond the department too.
Yeah, if they're in a meeting and a conflict comes up, because sponsorship, you can get into conflicts because they're the revenue generator, right? But sometimes they can step on toes, etc. And if you have that relationship, you're going to block for that person and say, well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's go ask them that question before we, knock that down or whatever. So.
Yeah. So what about then, some great stories of your time of, new, young executives that came and started, or even, frankly, even interns, of how they got a foot in the door. That's part of the path of, being part of an organization, get that first step. Or there's some things that you'd recommend repeating or even not doing as well, right? That's probably as good of a question.
Well, I think hard work is the key to when you start in a sports organization. So I do have a great success story. It's not related to the Bills actually, but as I've gone on in my career, I've mentored young women. One organization that I'd recommend looking into for women is the WISE, Women in Sports and Entertainment. It's a great resource. And I also have mentored some young people coming out of EVA. So this one young woman had moved to town, and she was looking for some type of employment, and to make my life more complicated, I live between Detroit and Buffalo. So this was in Detroit, and she's from Massachusetts, so I wasn't interested because I knew she was a Patriots fan. Just kidding. But so she's a Bills fan. She emails me. She gets my name from an acquaintance, emails me, and says, I'm a Bills fan. I just moved here from Massachusetts. I'm interested in sports. I don't have a job. I'm looking for a job, or she was hostessing or something. Can I have lunch with you? And I kind of, I was busy. I kind of, put on the background. And then she was persistent, not in an irritating way, but she came back and she said, look, if I can just get it, I'll buy lunch. I'm coming to you. What can I do, etc. So I said, sure, no problem. And we had a mutual friend. So I met her, and she was just super outgoing. And the bottom line is she was passionate about getting into the business. And she said, how do I get in? Just tell me how I can get it. I said, well, you're going to be unpaid.
Yeah.
But, she was probably 23, 24. She had, obviously a college degree. I said, you're going to get an unpaid internship. And she said, okay. So I actually had a connection that I reached out to, and obviously it's her resume. It's her she has to, you open a door, she has to walk through it. But her developing the connection with me was her way of opening a door for herself. So I got her an unpaid internship at a buddy of mine's place, and a sports consulting firm. She ran the show there. She did a tremendous job for them. Went the extra, just worked her butt off, did not get paid. They kept putting her on more projects. She was doing project work for the Lions. She was doing all this stuff, and she just took the bull by the horns and wasn't paid, right? But built relationships, because you have to get in order to start building those relationships. Once you're into a position, unpaid or not, it's now your day job to start understanding the business. So it's relevant for you to be reading the rags, for you to meet the people, etc. So she went from there in Detroit, and she actually got a full-time job down at the Tampa Bay Lightning, working for Todd Lewicki, who's a fantastic guy, and just got promoted. So now she's a director, and that happened in a year and a half.
So 18 months from the time she treated you to lunch, right, to present,
she has
0 to 60,
she's
right?
on a path upward at the Lightning, and what she did at the Lightning, she got into the position, but she joined all the committees. So they have these organizational committees, and that goes back to communication and getting to know the people around you. She got involved, and if you're interested in working for a sports team, just know it's going to be your life. It is going to be, as a young person getting into sports, it is all encompassing. Weekends, nights, my first 4 years, especially with the website. I mean, I was working till 1 a.m. You work on
your
weekends.
laptop,
yeah. Oh, there was a blizzard in Buffalo. It's shocking. But we got trapped. Long story short, we got trapped in this parking garage. Had to walk a mile home from where we got stuck. And I had my laptop because I had to update the website.
Looking for a dial-in connection, right?
Looking for a dial-in connection.
Yeah.
Boy, it is unbelievable how far technology's come.
Well, with that example of that student, and obviously, we were talking, even about the, Northwestern students here in Chicago. A lot of them are part-time students. The ability to take classes at night. The benefit of time, right? If they're graduating 18 months from now, and the ability to reach out to people here, even locally, great Chicago, sports market. To do some of those internships or, do that. What's your recommendation, maybe using that Tampa Bay Lightning example, more specific to them? I always find your job search starts yesterday, right? Of like putting your foot in the door, even if you're maybe graduating in 2016, you can relationship build and strengthen.
Yeah.
But what are some thoughts that you might have specific to them?
Well, I mean, if you're in Chicago, then you look to the different organizations. I mean, there's teams, there's agencies, there's consulting firms, and honestly, you're just looking
somebody to be your champion.
Yeah, you need mentors. So that I'm sure Northwestern has a good alumni network. I would imagine for this program, the alumni network. I would definitely take advantage of that. Any UVA student who gets in touch with me, I return the call. Because it's what you do. You sign up to be that person to get the call. But I also think just, the job sites, team jobs or whatever, in Buffalo, we get a lot of people who start and they'll just work on game day. So you get a job just working on game day and you just go through the normal process. But then when you're there on game day, you differentiate yourself by making sure that you're getting to know the people who would be hiring you. So then you're not just a game day employee. She's that game day employee who really, showed me how to improve something. She was in the concourse and she saw there was an issue and she let me know about it and gave me a solution. Do something different to kind of highlight yourself. But especially if you're still in school and maybe you're working at a different job or whatever, just getting something that may be just a one-off experience, but just getting in the door.
Yeah, I've talked to an HR director, actually here from a team in town, and she's like, students, if they can find those other volunteer opportunities or even, game day type experiences, charitable events. Actually, I've run into some Northwestern students volunteering at the Bears, black tie fundraiser. They're monitoring some of the charity auctions. But the phrase she used was, put yourself in a position to manage your brand in front of hiring decision makers. So even if you are just working game day, if you can get the executive vice president to take notice in how you handle the simplest of tasks or how you dealt with a situation, that speaks to what you said earlier about work ethic, right? And, those are the kind of people that you want around versus, I'm just looking for a job, right?
Yeah, and I will say the other thing, anytime I'm hiring someone, and this is kind of simple, but it's very, I won't not do it, is you have to hire people who are energy givers instead of energy takers, because they're going to be in your space. So,
yeah.
And you want to be around people who give energy. They're not sucking energy from you. So that's very much to Dan's point about managing your brand and managing your presence. You need to be perceived as someone who's giving versus someone who's complaining or someone who's not happy with the world. It's all about, what can you do for them? That's what, to get a job, what can I do for you? And this is why I know I can do it.
Yeah, your job also too is make the other people around you better. I think by naturally giving your energy. We've also heard the analogy, I think, in some of the discussions of, even kind of a child metaphor of, Tiggers versus Eeyores. You want the Tiggers, right? You want the high energy.
Who are you going to gravitate towards?
People, exactly.
I don't want to hang out with someone who's bringing me down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also too, the part of it is, you want the energy levels to transcend team performance sometimes too, because I think for us, especially in the students, I think are really focused on the revenue producing side of the business. That if anything, I use the analogy here in Chicago, the Bulls didn't need help marketing themselves in the late 90s of a revenue strategy. But, when you flip the win and losses around, you don't need a Debbie Downer in the office. You need someone who's like, you know what? Like,
here's the opportunity.
Exactly. And here's a unique element that we could go, and that's actually, I actually, part of that, I encourage students to really look at teams that are in the down cycle, because I think those organizations sometimes are more open.
That would be us.
Yeah.
And I would say that we've been very resilient from that standpoint. The hardest part about sports is that you don't have control over the product. You have control over, I will say NFL, the brand, et cetera, is the most powerful brand, arguably in the world. But it is, so you have that going for you. You have that platform to stand on, but you don't have the on-field platform. And I've watched so many games, as I'm sure you can imagine if you know the Bills' record, where devastating last-second losses. And the fans are, the whole entire city and Bills fans everywhere are absolutely depressed on Monday. You can feel the town go down. And you're sitting there thinking about your revenue streams and going, oh, great.
Yeah.
This isn't going to help. But what you have to do is, we always have like a 12-hour rule. And well, 24 hours, you know, by the next afternoon. But usually by noon on Monday, you have to be over the loss because you have to move forward with your business. You can only control what you can control. And you have to understand that, okay, that's over. What's next? And how do we make this a great day, you know, and how do we get better?
And it's going to happen, too,
right? It does happen,
And,
yeah.
I mean, I love that 24-hour rule, you know, as an example. But I remember my first, you know, couple games at the Bears. I was there during the Cade McNown era, so there wasn't a lot of W's being put up on the. But I remember walking in on Monday morning, talking to the receptionist, and like, you know, good morning. How was your day, or how was your weekend? She's like, horrible, and you know, she felt that loss, and then you feel that energy. But then we started to think about, again, the new media, you know, new opportunities. Since we had control over our own media presence, so Monday was kind of the recap. Tuesday was the official, you know, Players' Day off, so there wasn't a lot of news. Wednesday you'd look forward.
Yeah.
So we started developing content on Tuesday that was more lifestyle-oriented, that was controlled.
Now it's Community Day.
Exactly, yeah. But then by understanding that, you could use a methodical process, and we created new revenue streams we did, you know, tours of player houses, which we had
under the hood's access. Yeah.
Exactly, and that was kind of the official. Then it was really weird after more losses, which came during that time. On Wednesday morning, when I walk in and talk to the receptionist, she's like, "I love that tour of Brian Urlacher's house." You know, I love
cribs.
Who knew exactly?
Right?
Exactly, but. You know, the energy to that point, that created more positive energy from her, helped our CFO be happy because we were making more money, and all those elements too.
I would say that's been, and that's actually, I think all NFL teams are doing those types of things now. Like what we understood as we went through the new media, digital media process is that we're not maybe going to be breaking the stories all the time. I mean, we're the official source. What can you do as the official source? Because you get this rap, like, why are people going to go to they're not going to get any good editorial. They're just going to get the company line. Okay, well, we're never going to get totally past that because we are the company and we are going to message, you know, the company line to an extent. So what can we give they can't get anywhere else? And that's access. And it's individual. Like if you go to buffalobills.com right now, there's great pieces on all the guys. I mean, we're going into a year where people are questioning, we're young, there's a lot of question marks, and the in-person interviews and hearing the guys, getting to know Fred Jackson, getting to know, you know, CJ Spiller, you know, getting to know Sammy. It's really cool content, and people walk away knowing the Buffalo Bills, which pulls on their heartstrings. So if we don't win, they still care. Mm-hmm. You know, they still care, and they're still going to show up. So
in a weird way, I mean, the way you described your ideal employee of an energy creator, right? Versus an energy taker, you're creating energy to your fans too. You know, as part of that,
we want them excited.
Exactly.
And we, you know, use all the social media aspects for that too, Facebook and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I think going back on your timeline, and certainly, you know, I think, you know, maybe we'll transition and encourage the students and people in webinar land to post some questions for Mary as we kind of transition, you know, to almost the third quarter of the webinar. But you know, you went to the CRM position, and then you graduated to what was your next role after that?
So I actually was going to leave and kind of go a different direction, and Ralph asked me to actually move to Detroit, and so that's where our management company for the team is, and the financial operations for the team is based out of Detroit, and actually take on representation for him at the ownership level, at the ownership meetings. So I moved into more of a strategic role versus an operational role. So I was 25, and I got exposed to all of the owners and the senior level executives, and then was able to and now sit on, you know, the international committee, which is, so the NFL is run by a board, and as same way Congress works, you have the board, you have Congress, and then you have committees that really do all the work, same way companies work as well. So I sit on a few of those committees. So I'm on the International Committee, which oversees the international strategy for the NFL, which is a pretty fun, cool, new edge, high growth, we hope, area. And then also the Super Bowl committee, which everyone always likes that because that's a fun committee to be on. And then I'm on the board of the NFL Foundation. So when I moved to Detroit, I took on not only the ownership function, but I also took on our ownership representation function, not the ownership function, and then took on actually managing the foundation. So all of Mr. Wilson's philanthropy, which is a lot based in Buffalo. So I've always worn a lot of hats. I then transitioned into running our programs in Toronto, our games in Toronto, and also overseeing all of our community outreach in Buffalo, which is another operational job. So I have strategic and operational functions.
Yeah.
And it's very diverse and quite fascinating. So I've been doing that for 11 years now.
Well, you mentioned a lot of hats, right? I mean, that's ultimately what everybody will end up doing in this industry because when you go that ladder,
all hands on deck.
Exactly, but like how did you I mean, you have to be a quick study in so many different things of learning as you grow. You think to your first role to where you are now. What's that like? I mean, we just as an example, and Ted as a parallel. He started out as an accountant,
right,
and he's then negotiating player contracts, and he's self-admitted, like looking back, was cramming on resources to try to help him grow, and from that perspective. But what's that next level of education once you're kind of on the front line, so to speak, and how do you kind of navigate through that?
Well, I mean, I think a couple of things. First of all, when people ask me what I do, I say whatever it takes, because my role has been quite unique because of the family orientation, and it's really been about gap filling. So trying to find opportunities where we need to get better and it's not being covered, and how do I play a role, and how do I either get it up and going or how do I do it myself. But I think the question in terms of moving up the chain, it's a very good one, because when you're at an entry-level position, you're very much, and I don't want to say ministerial, but you're executing. You're executing a function. You're directly reporting to someone who's going to tell you basically what to do. There's room for creativity, but you have a job to do and do it. Then as you move up the chain, now you're managing people, and you have to do different things with your time. Where if you're just working and your focus is social media and you're just hammering that, it's great. But now, if you're a manager of the social media person and a few other people, you now have to understand how to delegate those responsibilities and not micromanage them. So now you have to take on a whole different, time management is a lot different from entry level to managerial level. And I think that there's probably tons of books you could read on that subject. I think the best way to do it is find a manager that whether it's your manager or whether you see someone who really manages people well, and ask them to be a mentor. Or just have a conversation. They don't even need to be your mentor. You just watch and learn, and you also have to watch yourself. Okay, as you go, you do performance appraisals on 6-month annual basis, whatever. But do your own performance appraisal. Say, okay, what did I do this week? What did I think that I should have done better? And where did I mess up? It's a growing process. And this book, I read this book, and I don't remember the author, but it's called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And I think that's very telling, because what made you successful, so say for me when I was doing the website, obviously just working nonstop, creating content, working with the web development company, just doing everything, working really hard, being very detailed, document retention, all these things made me very successful. As I went up the chain, if I were to do that, I wouldn't be able to do my job, because strategy is so much different than operations. You now have to think big at a much higher level, and you get the details coming from reports that you're getting from people. But that was hard for me, because I wanted to dive in. I wanted to get in the granularness of it, but if I did that, I wouldn't have time, and I couldn't see the big picture. Mm-hmm. So that book was a pretty good one. But I do think watching and learning from people that you appreciate and who do it well is the best way.
Yeah, so we're getting a couple questions come through, and I think one is there's a question of work-life balance. Of the sports life. You're right. You mentioned it's 24/7. I think the students have an idea of what they're getting into, but what are some tips? Especially, we've all got these guys glued to our hip at any given time, and how do you kind of manage that part of the equation, or are there tips, or frankly, even the woman that you described from UVA, is there a chapter that you should just expect to be in 24/7?
Yeah, I think your young. I think your young 20s. It's a lot of fun. When you're in your 20s and you're working and you're with all these fun people, it is fun. I mean, that's why you get into sports, because there's so much about it. That's what I always say about sports is that people want to work in it because everyone who's not working it are constantly looking at it while they're at work. they want to be looking at sports, and if you're working in sports, you get to do it all day long. So it's a lot of fun. Training camp, I lived at training camp every summer for a month. I mean, it was a big camp of fun people. I mean, you were working. But so I say enjoy that. And then, it is, work-life balance is always important because you will get burnt out. And I think, especially as you go up the ranks and into manager, director level, you do have to create your boundaries. I say that, and I've been traveling. If you're going to have a very high-level career, there's a lot of sacrifice. Yeah. I mean, that's the bottom line. You are going to have to work a lot. It doesn't mean you can't have a life, but you just have to create your own boundaries. When you get to a certain place, you can block off time. Okay, I can't take a meeting then. I've got this priority, etc. But you have to understand how to. It's about accomplishing the objectives. It's about performance. It's not about time in the office when you get to the higher levels.
Yeah.
So, and that's and as far as the phone is concerned, well, we all know this. It creates a 24/7 work experience, but it also creates flexibility. So I'm flying to Chicago this morning, and I have a lot going on. Well, you know what? If I didn't have this phone, I'd be so stressed out because I wouldn't be able to get back to people. I wouldn't be able to. So there's a lot of life balance that you can get because you have technology. But you have to understand, and of course, I say this, and I'm not, we all do it. You got to know when you got to put it down, right? You got to know when you're just on Facebook. It's like, you don't need to be looking at your phone. Yeah. You can spend time with your friends. You don't need to look at Facebook.
Look up, right?
Yeah, look up. So I think everyone's different in that regard. I will say that I kind of was on a path, and it was a really fast path, and I really liked the path. It was challenging. It was a high learning curve. So I never really, I would say, if I were going to go back and say, what would I do a little bit differently, I would have said, coming out of school, what's my 5-year plan? Not that I didn't think about a 5-year plan, but I was like on this trajectory, and I just kind of went with it. But what's my 5-year plan? Because, I always get asked the gender question, the female, blah, blah, blah. And the bottom line is that, men and women do have different decisions to make in their careers. And not bad or good, just different. And as a female, coming out of school, I was empowered to do everything, educated, career, etc. But there is this other part of wanting to have a family and be a mom. So I think if you need to have a plan, okay, do I want that? Do I, what do I want? How do I want to spend my time? And whether you're male or female, you should do it. But what priorities do I want, and how do I get there? And I would do that every year, 5 years out.
And just managing yourself as your own company, right? I mean,
it's funny how we are so worried at work to make everything perfect, and then we leave our own stuff to.
Yeah. Well, one of the other questions we had too was, when we talk about devices, as well. Obviously, they can be a distraction enhancement for us in our personal lives, but also a lot of talk, in-game experience, right? Of that is a strong topic of conversation. And the students I think are spending a lot of time talking about that in class. I think that discovering almost like the next aha idea. But how has that role changed in technology and the in-game experience? I mean, think back, 15 years ago, it was you looked at the video board and then you looked at the game, right? Versus what are the things that you're seeing? What are the things that students should be thinking about as it relates to, that technology and the in-game experience?
Well, I mean, it's been a huge focus of the NFL because the NFL is one of its strategic priorities, increasing the in-game fan experience overall via technology or whatever. So because we've noticed now with the product being so, the in-home experience is just getting better and better. TVs get better and better, and the pain points of going to the stadium can cause you to just want to stay home. So how do we alleviate those pain points? And one of those major ways is via technology. So what you're seeing now with the NFL is they are now mandating, there's a fan experience committee that actually provides recommendations and more like you have to do this to the teams. And everything from you have to show the replay on the board. So before, if it was a bad instant replay, but if they scored on you, you don't want to show that again. Or if there was a flag and you don't want to replay it, now you have to. So these are things where, because the fans want to see it, that's the bottom line. And then we hit all the out-of-town scores, so you have to have constantly on your video board. NFL Red Zone highlights. NFL Red Zone is developed by NFL Network, and it basically just shows highlights of games. It's all kind of like your candy, your sugar high, instead of having to watch a whole game, which has been incredibly popular. So getting those elements into the in-game experience so that people understand that they're not going to miss it if they're in the game versus if they're at home. If they're at the home, they've got 10 devices going, they got 10 games going, they got their computer, the laptop, their iPad. So how do we recreate that? So the biggest issue, and it's still an issue, is producing that 100% strong Wi-Fi signal, the signal where you're going to get a connection all the time and it's going to be like being at home. I don't think the code has been cracked there yet. Everyone's doing a lot of work. There's also a cost issue. It's very expensive. So I think it's getting better, but I think the next phase is obviously having the same experience with your phone and device that you get at home. And through the phone, you'll use whatever app you're using, or Verizon or NFL or whatever.
Whatever the next iteration of it is, right?
And then obviously, using this for point of sale, using this for ordering food when you're in your seat, those types of things I think are definitely on the way, and will be here pretty quickly.
No, and it's constantly changing, right? So, I mean, what do you think then the role of the next generation of sports executives will play in that, right? I mean, the idea of, many of the audience, even in this webinar, are probably the consumers, right, that you're trying to go after, that are in their 20s, they use technology as part of their life. What are those things that they should be thinking about? Is it aligning it just with a fan enhancement? Is it aligning it with a revenue stream?
I think
all
both.
the above?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think you don't, there's a lot of things that don't have to do with technology in terms of fan experience. It's customer service. It's the pace at which you get in the stadium. It's the pace at which you get out the stadium. It's the ingress, egress, the traffic patterns. We've done so much work. Helicopters flying over the stadium to see the traffic patterns and blocking off a road here and doing this and changing the way people park and providing more communication, push communication before the game. So I think, in terms of an NFL experience, the next generation really will have to focus on how to make that experience so differentiated by being there versus staying at home. And, that could come in the form of, a halftime show, which we found the halftime show doesn't really move the needle, which is interesting.
But that's something that you might, on the surface, think, oh, we'll get a better halftime show.
But it's expensive, and there's always the cost-benefit equation. Like, what's the return on investment? Which I'm sure you guys, anything you're doing, you say, what's the return on investment? Because there's always a cost, and it could be a great idea, but it's,
Well, it seems to me, and the students do a capstone project, prior to graduation, where they really solve one large issue. I think you just teed up one, for them to look at of what's, how do you enhance the fan experience in game, in modern times, that's going to get the proverbial butts out of the, butts and seats, right, is what we want to do. Couple other questions kind of as we get down to the final couple minutes here. One of the students asked on the question board, staying in one job versus maneuvering through, owning kind of one end. Are you a sponsorship guy? Are you ticket sales, community versus, moving unilaterally, to round out the skill set? What advice do you have, or what are some pros and cons that you've seen of that?
Yeah, I think that, I, again, was in a unique situation, and had it not been my family, I would have moved organizations. I would have moved somewhere else, but I was able to have the diversity in functions that I needed, because I do feel like you need diversity, because you need to make sure that you're marketable, not just pigeonholed into one little area. So I was able to find that through one organization. But I do recommend, when you're with a company, to always kind of be, as you go on your growth path, you always want to have leverage. So you want to do a great job where you are, but you never want to lose sight of, where do you want to go and what am I really liking here? I think a lot of it has to do with when you're at your job on a daily basis, what do you enjoy doing? And it doesn't mean it's easy, but what are you really interested in? Because you could be sitting there in sponsorship and really, and you really like the sponsorship agreements where you're servicing the community elements, and you've really found that that's engaging to you. So, for example, Independent Health is our new health sponsor, official health sponsor for the Bills. They're huge in the community. Most of their partnership with us is going to be community based. So if you find that that's what you're really into, maybe you should think about. We have a lot of people in our building who move departments, just based on what they like. But I do think diversity is good. I do think that creating leverage by having the ability to leave an organization, go to another organization, and maybe coming back later. You never want to burn bridges. You always want to keep relationships strong. You always want to be straightforward. But no one's going to begrudge you pushing your whole career and finding your own career path. No good manager will begrudge someone young and smart moving for a bigger opportunity or looking for a growth opportunity.
And it's interesting, kind of in a roundabout way. It all goes back to the relationship you have with the people you work with, right? I remember we shared, with Ted, when I had an opportunity for growth outside of the organization, I felt comfortable enough talking to him about it, and I knew that he would look after my best interest. And I remember him saying, you have to go do this, but you'll always have a place here. And there's something very gratifying of when you talk about your 5-year plan, right? Part of that of I really want to maximize my time here, or get to a point where they're supportive of a growth opportunity. Right. But I've built in such a strong base where
they don't want to lose me. You want them to be hurt by you leaving.
Yeah.
Because it means you were adding a lot of value. But I do think one of the hard part about sports, at least at the team level, because you can enter in all different places, but the team level, it is like this. I mean, there's a lot of base jobs, but as you go on, because a lot of people stay in their positions for a long period of time, so your growth, and we lose young people all the time. I'm sorry, young good people all the time, because they have to go elsewhere to get to that next level, because the person who's in that role isn't leaving.
Yeah, but those organizations are good to get your first foot in the door too.
Absolutely, you got to. I think don't be scared to move.
Yeah,
I think that's the point. Is always be ready to move.
I look actually outside of even the NFL, the Detroit Pistons, the Palace Sports and Entertainment. I don't know how many C-level executives I know that started out there.
Famous man,
yeah. But I mean, you can list them. Of a number. Brent Stellick at the Cleveland Browns. That's an organization that they will give really a lot of people a shot, and if you can succeed, hey, we'll either find a way or you'll go on and do something else. And I think those are the ones that you start to scout out. So, with that as we wrap up, I know we had a little glitch getting started for us old new media types, right? We managed to get it. I'll end with a little bit of a softball question, but you mentioned, working in sports is fun. It's hard, long hours. If you look back at your time, to date with the Bills, what's your favorite part of your job?
I think my favorite part of my job is being part of something that is so much bigger than I am. You know, sports, especially for me in Buffalo, which is so special. It is bigger than me, and it is the entire community, the entire area is emotionally connected, economically connected, and unbelievably interwoven with the team. And to be a part of that, not only to be a part of it, but to use that platform and that brand and everything that it's about to do good work, because a lot of my job focuses now on community outreach, but to be able to make a really positive impact on people's lives in the community by way of the Buffalo Bills and by way of the brand, I don't think it gets better than that. It is a lot of fun, and it's very, very special.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story. Obviously Northwestern, a lot of Chicago, folks that are, on the other end of the webinar. I think you picked up a few more Bills fans, probably with your time in Intel.
Weekend.
Exactly. So we'll see. But best of luck this season. Beth, thank you so much for hosting and for all the students that attended. We're signing off, and everybody have a great opening NFL weekend.